Welcome everyone to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about Chucky Season 1 Episode 6. It's called Cape Queer. So, full spoilers for the episode. I have to start this with a confession. I have never actually seen Cape Fear. It's been on the to-do list for a long time, but I got that was the movie Devin was watching just because, one, the title is a big hint, but two, because I knew Robert De Niro was in it, so at least that version of it, so I got it. It's okay. No, the episode was good. The show seems to be getting really comfortable with itself the more it goes on, and we're really just deep into the lore of the movies now. If there's a critique to be had, it's maybe that it's a little strange, like just how much they've had to kind of try to backdate and explain, like the middle of the season, with explaining who Andy and Kyle are as we see them in this episode. And you know, because the opening previously on by Jennifer Tilly, I'd actually completely forgotten that Tiffany actually possessed the real Jennifer Tilly. I'd forgotten that was a plot point in the movie, so I'm glad to put that in the previously. But I was, oh yeah, shit, that as well. So there was just all these things kind of like popping up, but it's a minor thing, and especially if you have seen the movies, it's obviously not that much of a big deal. But it is exciting to see these characters pop up. It's exciting to see them interact. I think Kyle and Andy's big scene, obviously they talk to the heroes, our main characters, on the phone. They're on their way. They're coming to help. But the big thing is their introduction, which they've been going around mopping up these excess Chucky dolls that are possessed, posing as census takers, and they traumatized this poor family by shooting this Chucky doll. And I think the shot is very intentionally kind of mimicking something like Reservoir Dogs, the way it's like both of them like just with looking down and shooting at the Chucky doll. The low angle looking up at them made me think of Reservoir Dogs, and maybe because Andy and Kyle are both in like suits. But yes, poor girl is traumatized forever. Andy has no chill. Again, if I'm going to make like an objective critique, I don't necessarily think the actors who play Andy and Kyle are, like, has the actor who played Andy like continued acting since he was a kid? Like, he kind of feels like someone who left acting and has been brought back because he's attached to this, and it's good that they did, because it's like authentic. It's Andy. It's really him. And it's almost funny a little bit that they reference his time in military academy. So even Child's Play 3 has been referenced now at this point, meaning that every single movie in the franchise has on some level been referenced over the course of this show. And Andy is a little disturbed when he says the tortured Chucky head he kept, which was, a plot point in the movies, that he liked the screams when he burned the most. They were louder than even his screams, which is the most psychotic thing. One of the most psychotic things I think one can say is that those were my favourite screams. So I'm going to play a little bit with how, because the whole conversation that leads to that as well is like that they traumatized this kid, but he's like, we turned it all right. Did you, Andy? Did you? But yeah, fun seeing them. You get little clips of Child's Play 2 when they're talking about what they went through. Unfortunately for my ace co-host Tara, there was no Garrett Graham clips to behold, but he was in that movie, so worth mentioning. So yeah, enjoyed that stuff quite a bit. It was just it was a fun premise, having them going around hunting these dolls, and I think they mentioned that there's really only the one left, so they've actually cleaned up most of them, and they do know about they know about Nika, they know about, well, I guess Jennifer Tilly at this point, so neat. And then of course the other thing to sort of jump up before we get to the main characters and the main plot, we'll talk about Jennifer Tilly and Nika, and even the flashback as well. We have one 80s flashback again. It's them buying their car and killing the guy who's selling it to them. It teases the voodoo book and like Charles Lee Ray been into that stuff. I don't have much to say about this scene except that it was very enjoyable to watch. Obviously the weird dubbing's still there. I'm still wildly impressed that that's Fiona Dourif playing young Charles Lee Ray. Even broad daylight, it wasn't like an obvious thing. Like, I know it's her, but I still couldn't really see it all the time. Like, I really had to, if anything, knowing it's is a little bit distracting at points, because I'm paying so I'm looking for it. Like, I'm, instead of like really being engrossed in the story of the scene, I'm just looking at her and trying to see her in there underneath the makeup and whatnot. But yeah, they're fun enough scene. I like the vibe that these have had, the 80s flashbacks in particular, with the scan lines and kind of, because the stuff from the 60s when he was a kid was like Super 8 film, the idea that this is the type of cameras that could be accessible at the time. And now it's the 80s, so we've switched the scan lines to emulate kind of a VHS videotape kind of thing. And obviously it's actually still much better looking than anything from the 80s would look, because we don't want it to look like shit, but it's emulating the feel of it, and that's neat. So yeah, so Nika does pop back up again. Once again, she is triggered by blood, and she tries to pretend to be Chucky. And this is the interesting thing here, is that Jennifer Tilly catches on and is asking questions about when they got married and stuff like that, and Nika's kind of bluffing her way out of it. She sort of, it's funny that she's now she's now playing a character who's pretending to do an impression of Chucky, as opposed to actually just portraying Chucky in her body. It's a weird double thing that's happening. Same with Jennifer Tilly, actually, when you think about it. She's not playing herself, really. She's playing someone else who's possessed her own body, which is a all of this is really weird and funny, and kind of fun. But I did actually love the reveal that, after all this coy, like, trying to figure out, is she acting like Chucky would? Is she gambling like Chucky would because they're playing cards? That Jennifer Tilly just reveals that, and I stabbed you like 5 minutes ago in the leg and you didn't feel anything. So I kind of, that was like a really sort of darkly funny reveal that she already figured it out. She already had the proof. She was just toying with her. But she's like, hey, I can control you better than Chucky. And has bought Chucky's childhood home in Hackensack. So they are in the town. Like, we're getting closer to all these plot lines emerging. We have these characters being more relevant. And Nika's been held captive. And all of this is just like really intriguing setup. And I'm enjoying the performances. And I'm enjoying kind of where it's going to go. But the real story of the show, though, and as it absolutely should be, is the kids. And it is the story of Chucky killing people in this town. So the arrest of Miss Fairchild, the teacher, I thought came a little out of nowhere. Like, they kind of tried to explain it after the fact, and Devon's mum's like, hey, you were next in line for the job. But I'm glad that Fairchild like sniped back at her, because when Detective Evans said that her fingerprints were all over the principal's office, I'm like, well, yeah, she works there. She's probably in there all the time. Like, this is not weird. They're expected to be there. That's like saying my fingerprints are all over my keyboard. Yes, no shit. Like, they're supposed to be there. But that like abruptness aside, like, the kids caring about the fact that, because they know she didn't do it, is really kind of nice. It gives them kind of a noble reason, other than just wanting to stop Chucky from killing people, which is pretty noble in of itself. It's a very heroic thing. But the idea that, no, we like this woman, especially for Lexi, because Lexi was really shitty with her. So Lexi being the one to get up first and kind of like saying, no, like, Devon's right, like, she's innocent, and they don't listen to her, of course. But her trying to stick up for Miss Fairchild is a nice little face turn. It's a nice little, again, building on her being more of a human being and being someone who cares about those around her. And that's something that comes to a head with, obviously, Junior in this episode, because Bree admits that she's sick to her family, and it's really heartfelt. I actually think they did a pretty good job with this, and not so. I mean, the scene where she's telling Junior's fine. That's okay. But the scene that I really liked is the scene when she's going to her therapy appointment and she takes Junior in the car. So Junior's like there for moral support. So he feels like he's been a better son than her husband's been a husband, right? Devon Sawad sends a text, and that's kind of it. And Junior says, "Why don't we talk about some of these issues at home?" And she doesn't have a good answer for him, but you kind of get the impression that a lot of it's because Devon Sawa doesn't want to talk about certain things, and that's like one of the big roots of the problems of the family dynamic. And I thought that scene was kind of sweet. It set up that she really cares about him, and she kind of assures him of that. And she goes up to the therapy office. She says that she doesn't want treatment. She feels confident. She doesn't want to like put them through misery and pain. She's going to, she's really she's really sure about what she wants out of this. And the therapist tries to talk her out of it, accuses her of like avoiding or not admitting she's depressed, and she's like, "No, I'm not depressed." And you kind of believe her. Like, it seems to come from kind of a genuine place, right? Like maybe she's wrong, but it feels like she really believes she's making the right choice here. It doesn't feel like it's coming from a construed like place. And of course, this is probably like they've finally given her enough characterization where she feels like sympathetic, because okay, suddenly her and Junior feel like kind of they have a nice relationship that feels like it's starting to address maybe what they don't talk about, so they feel more fleshed out. It feels like not teaming up against the dad, Logan, but in the sense that because they're starting to be more open and he's refusing to be, you're starting to kind of like see them as growing characters, and because of that you're starting to root for them a little bit. And it's right as you feel that, just a little, not an extreme way, but you feel it just a little bit. And she's walking out all confident. She's got her fancy suit on. She's head held high. It's at that moment that little bastard Chucky makes his presence known. You do hear his laugh under the car, and I thought maybe he was going to come after Junior. But, because one of the thoughts I had actually when they arrested Fairchild was that, well, surely as soon as another murder happens and she's locked up in the police station, well, all of a sudden, like, it can't be her anymore, right? Or at the very least, there's another murderer out there. That raises a lot of questions. And this one, of course, looks like a suicide, though. You can sort of see it building up to it, where he's sort of laughing, he's got the trowel, he's like, oh, he's going to put her out the window, and it's going to look like suicide. And this goddamn therapist, because she was trying to drive the narrative that she was depressed, is going to, like, back up the suicide angle. And this was... this may be my new favourite death in the show. And I think the reason why I feel that way is because how cruelly funny it is. Like I said, they actually, I think, made me care a little bit about Junior and his mum and their relationship, because of how sort of like honest it started to feel right before this. So they really overdo the moment, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Like they bask in the slow motion of her falling. It's almost like Hans Gruber. The watch has come off. Holly's let go of Hans Gruber in the slow motion with the hair as she's falling to her death, and we get when it finally cuts down to Junior. You see the trolley lands first on another car, and then you're like, oh, where's she landing though? She lands on her own car right in front of Junior, and not only has she landed on the front of the car, her face has come through the windshield. The very front of her face is like sort of made an oval shaped hole in the window, and her face is like her dead corpse face is staring basically right at him. And he actually came out the car in shock, and Chucky's looking down, faking his own shock and laughing occasionally. And it's so cruel and mischievous and like insane, and like I laughed a little bit, but I felt bad a little, because I actually did start to kind of like appreciate their relationship as mother and son. It started to actually be a little heartwarming, and because such a big part of the show is, I've said in every single review basically since like episode 2 that this is all about parents and their kids and their relationships, right, and how they see each other. And so the fact that this was the one that maybe wasn't clicking as much as like some of the other ones finally started to feel good right before this, and just how brutally in his face it literally was kind of funny to me. And maybe that says a lot about me and my dark sense of humor. But this show kind of puts you in a place where you are in a bit of a mischievous sense of humor. You're there for the dark humor, and I felt it in this scene. It was a delightful death. It built up perfectly, it crescendoed, and it ended with this like kind of real gut punch but kind of hilarious final moment. And so really good. And it's not the only death in this episode, of course. It's not the only parent's death in this episode. At that. So the shock of all this, of everyone kind of like reacting to it. I didn't even mention that Junior broke up with Lexi because she's distracted working with the others. And this is the thing. It's like, okay, more than ever, we have to stop Chucky. So they set up booby traps. Devin's watching Cape Fear to learn some stuff, and I've not seen the movie, so I don't know the context for it. But he's basically learned how to set like a tripwire as an alarm system. So they know if Chucky's entered the house, and they're going to like wait at Jake's place. Well, I say Jake's place; it's really Junior's place, but to wait for Chucky. So I love like anything in a horror movie where the characters start getting proactive and start setting traps. I love this shit. So I was all about them doing all this stuff, and it felt like they really had some goals or some fun moments in here. Lexi's like being mad at them for trying to do rock paper scissors, and she takes like point in the bedroom as the sort of the main bit of bait. I love the two of them, the Jake and Devin, that is, like them getting scared right after they said nothing can scare us when the doll starts moving. Really good. But one of the big things that I've glossed over here is that I've seen right as he's like watching Cape Fear, Devin ends up talking to his mum and admits how he feels about Jake. He comes out to his mother. And it's not a surprise to her. She kind of says it for him. She sees where the conversation's going. She gently sort of brings it out of him. And it's a sweet enough scene where she understands, because she's got what she thinks is the culprit. She doesn't think Jake's a psychopath anymore, so she's kind of okay with it. But it's a sweet coming out scene. She assures him that nothing's changed. He's still her son. All those sentiments. And it was right at this point where it occurred to me that I'm like, see, this is reminding me of like 20 minutes ago. This is reminding me of 20 minutes ago when they finally kind of made me feel something for Junior and Lexi Doyle's character, for Bree. Which, by the way, Jason never quite got to her, but Chucky did kill her. She's not to spoil Jason X, the cinematic masterpiece that is Jason X, but she survived that movie. She was not as lucky with a little Chucky running around. But I was starting to think, you know what? That scene feels like it was there to make me feel like Devin had a really nice moment with with his mum before her death. Right? It started to feel like, I'm thinking like in a meta like TV writing way where I'm like, you give characters a scene like that because you're about to do something bad to one of them. And sure enough, and I didn't necessarily think it was going to happen in this episode, but it did occur to me that this is here so that when she dies in an episode or two, we're going to care a little bit, because for all the mistakes she's maybe made as a police officer, for all the wrong accusations she's maybe thrown around, we're going to see, no, she has a good mom, she cares about her son, and it's going to work. And so we get the booby traps, we get Chucky coming after them, going up to Lexi and trying to do a 180 and try to convince Lexi to kill Jake, and she kind of stalls him a little bit while Jake's sneaking up behind him. And a lot of this is kind of fun. I love Chucky. I love Chucky like slicing Jake's leg as he goes past, but I really loved when Devin shocks him with the taser, and Chucky just sort of goes flying down the hall. I thought that was a really fun little moment. Cool visual. The knife landing next to him, again, good visual. All that's good stuff. But of course, Devin's mum shows up looking for him because she made it clear she didn't want him to leave. She tried to call him, he didn't answer. So it's not a huge leap that she suspected he might be over here where Jake is, right? She knows about their feelings, and they had that sweet scene on the stairs talking about going on a date, yada yada. So she's walking around, and I thought, oh, okay, maybe she's going to see the doll, right? And she's going to be kind of brought into it for a little bit before she dies. The idea that she's going to know that, like, it was the doll, she's going to, like, understand what the context is before she eventually dies. And she falls down the stairs, and I thought what they were going to do is that when Chucky, like, pushes her down the stairs, I thought, oh, she's probably going to end up in hospital, like, and not wake up for a couple of episodes. And the idea is that once she wakes up, she's going to know that Chucky's behind things, and she's going to be like this new, like adult ally that they can now count on. Maybe she dies, maybe she doesn't, right? But of course, when she lands at the bottom of the steps, you see her head snap, and you're like, "Oh shit, she just died!" Like she just straight up died. And it wasn't until the very final shot I realized that her head was doing a complete 180. Which again, the dark humor of Chucky made me kind of chuckle at that a little bit. But this was a big thing. This was because I think between Bree and Detective Evans, I feel like Detective Evans definitely felt like the more prominent character, even though she wasn't part of the family. I feel like we had a lot more time with her, and we had a lot more scenes with her and Devon. So this kind of felt like this double punch of two mothers being killed in this episode was surprising, but it really feels like, again, things are going up and up and up. And I don't know how like they explain this death, and I know that the kids have to themselves, but like, does this just look like a suicide? Does this, like, what do the other authorities say? Do we have other police characters that we're going to see a bit more? Because maybe the shitty partner got killed, didn't he? I don't know who we see from the authorities. I can see the timeline accelerating a little bit, or not accelerating, but the idea that all the events now are going to take place in a really condensed amount of time, so there's not necessarily as much time to like dwell between events. We have 4 episodes left, I believe, of the season, and we have a lot of characters coming in from the movies. So I guess it makes sense in a weird way to kill off a few of the excess TV show cast, so we've got room for them. But it did hit, and I think it being one of our 3 lead kids' parents to die at the end made it feel like a big deal. It also means that now Junior, Jake, and now Devon have all lost a parent to Chucky, which means Lexi's the one who's left, and I can see it happening. Like, I feel like her mother is like just like her time is numbered, right? Her time is nigh, and I don't expect it's going to be too long before. I mean, maybe they'll save that for the finale because they've made her a bit more unlikable than some of these other parents. Obviously, Jake's dad was pretty unlikable as well, but certainly the 2 in this episode are some more sympathetic characters who are given a chance to be good parents before they die, to see that they are trying their best with their kids. And it's, the idea that Chucky, he isn't picking and choosing, really. Like, he's picking and he's going after people who are going to affect those closest to him. Although, to be fair, Detective Evans, I feel like, is more of a happenstance thing because she happens to be there at the end. That's not like a planned murder, but he does jump out at her. So yeah, good episode. A couple of good kills, especially the Bree kill. I thought was excellent, and it feels like the kids are becoming more of a tight unit. The relationship between Jake and Devon is, getting nice to a sweet point, and now, obviously it's not going to be all happy next episode because Devon just lost his mother. So, the motivation to get Chucky, the determination, is going to be an all-time high, and so I don't know if Andy and Kyle arrive next episode. They were, I don't know. What state are they in right now? I actually can't remember which state they're in, so I don't know if Virginia, which is the last place we saw them in, is that far. I'd have to. What state's Hackensack in? I can't remember. It must be Illinois, right? Because I'm pretty sure they were in Chicago at the start of the first movie. It doesn't matter. Anyway, they'll get there when they get there. So yeah, a good up. Honestly, the show at this point, it's so comfortable and it's found its footing in terms of what it wants to be, that any little nitpicks or little quirks because it's whatever, like anything now is very forgivable because the overall show very much knows what it wants to be, and I feel like it's hitting it pretty much all the time now. And we're at the point now as well where the characters have had enough time to grow that I like the main kids. They did a good job with making the parents who died this episode be sympathetic before they died. And even Junior, like, I felt a bit of sympathy for because of his mother's death. And I'm very curious to see, like, I could see him almost becoming an antagonist because he is going to be so mad at the others and he's going to feel alienated. Junior might be the one that Chucky actually is able to convince to kill someone. If Chucky's part of Chucky's like thing is that he loves to convince people to become killers, I could see Junior being the one that he succeeds with because he's tried it with Jake and that was like a long, multiple episode arc, and he's tried it, briefly with Lexi. Obviously, didn't go anywhere, but he was going to try. He clearly wants to do this. So Junior could be the one that he kind of does it with. Of course, he's not going to mention that he killed his mother. I suspect he will lie about that, and that's something we can play with. But very good stuff. Very good stuff. So that is Chucky episode 6, Cape Queer. I'm looking forward to episode 7. Do you know what's funny? Like a show like this, like the first few episodes, it was very much like, oh, I'll keep watching it and see how it improves. There's some things to like, and some of it's a bit ropey, some of the acting's a bit rough or whatever. It's funny how you get, to episode 5 and 6, and I feel like at this point I'm actually starting to just look forward to the next episode. Like I'm just caring about the story now, and it's earned a little bit of trust, and it's not like proving itself anymore. Now it's like, oh no, I'm into it, and I expect it to be at least of a certain standard now, and that's a good feeling to have with a TV show. Over the hump, as you might say, over that teething problems hump. Okay, I shall wrap up. Thank you very much for joining me. Let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. It does help out a lot on YouTube. That's why all YouTubers ask you to do it. You can also support us over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses for your trouble. But otherwise, that is me, and that is us. So I'll see you next week for the next Chucky. There's some other shows starting this week, which I'll be looking at pilots for. Cowboy Bebop and Wheel of Time being the two in question. Not really looking forward to either of them, if I'm honest. But the patron has spoken, so it is what it is. So thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you next time. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?